I never liked calling it home. It was just a house, a structure with four walls, a creaky staircase, and rooms that echoed with silence, the kind of silence that screams louder than words ever could. I was just a little girl back then, maybe 6 or 7, when I first realized that warmth wasn't something you could always find in a family. My parents weren't cruel, not in the way that leaves bruises on skin, but they were absent, emotionally absent. My mother would spend her days hunched over the kitchen counter, scrolling on her phone or smoking by the window. My father? He was there, but only physically. His presence was like a shadow, always hovering, never touching, never speaking unless it was to scold or complain. So naturally, I gravitated toward the only person who ever smiled at me, my brother. Ados was 5 years older than me. He had this way of making me feel like I mattered. When our parents ignored me, he noticed. He'd bring me candy from the store, play hide and seek in the backyard, tell me bedtime stories when my mom was too tired or busy. I thought he was my hero, my safe place. But monsters don't always come with red eyes and claws. Sometimes they have warm smiles and familiar voices. It started small. A lingering hand on my shoulder, a kiss on the forehead that didn't feel quite right. I remember freezing, staring blankly at the peeling paint on the wall behind him, wondering if it was just my imagination. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was overthinking. That's what I told myself. Until the night he came into my room. I was 9, he was 14. I remember the way the doorknob turned slowly. The hallway light spilled across my floor like a warning I didn't understand. He didn't say anything at first, just sat beside me on the bed. I thought he was going to tell me another story, like he used to, but the story that night wasn't told in words. It was in touches, in silence, in the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, screaming at me to move, to run, to scream. But I didn't. I couldn't. My body stopped responding. It was like something deep inside me detached and floated away, like my mind was trying to protect me from the horror of what was happening. Afterward, he left without a word, closed the door behind him, and I laid there, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand why I felt like I had just died. The next morning, everything was normal. My mother made breakfast, humming to herself. My father read the paper. Ados sat across from me at the table and smiled like nothing had happened. And that was when I learned that evil can wear a familiar face, that silence can be a prison. I wanted to tell someone. I really did. But who? My mother never noticed anything unless it involved the neighbors or her gossip circle. My father would have probably told me I was confused or dramatic. So I did. I kept quiet the next night, and the one after that, and every other night he decided to steal another piece of me. At school, I wore a mask. I laughed when others laughed, I got good grades, teachers liked me. I was the quiet, polite girl who never caused trouble. No one ever suspected what was happening behind the closed doors of that lifeless house. I began to hate myself, hate my body, hate the sound of my own voice. And most of all, I hated that I still craved love, that a small part of me still wanted someone, anyone, to just hold me and say, "You're safe now." But that never came. The years passed, and I became a shell, a walking ghost. I would count the minutes until bedtime with dread. Sometimes I pretended to be sick, hoping he wouldn't come. Sometimes I stayed awake all night, staring at the door, praying it wouldn't move. But it always did. Until one day, it didn't. He was 18 when he left, some factory job in another city. My parents cried at the train station. I didn't. I stood there, pretending to be sad, when in reality, I could finally breathe. For the first time in years, my chest didn't feel like it was caving in. He hugged me goodbye. I didn't hug back. When he walked away, I felt something break loose inside me. A scream I'd been holding in for years finally clawed its way out. But only inside. On the outside, I just stood there, silent, as always. That summer, I turned 15. I applied to a boarding school far away, using every excuse I could find. Better education, I told them, new opportunities. But the real reason was simple. I wanted to run. Run from that house, from the memories, from myself. When I got accepted, my mother barely looked up from her phone. My father muttered something about expenses. But I didn't care. I packed my bags like I was escaping a war zone. And in a way, I was. On the train ride to my new school, I watched the trees blur past the window. I imagined them wiping away every part of my past with each passing second. I tried to picture a new life, one without fear, one where I could sleep through the night, one where I could look in the mirror and not feel disgust. But trauma doesn't disappear just because the monster is gone. It hides, it waits, and even though I had escaped the house had not escaped me. They say silence is peaceful, but the silence I lived in, it was suffocating. When Ados left, I thought it would all go away. The fear, the guilt, the memories. I thought maybe the nightmares would stop, that I'd finally sleep with the door closed, or better yet, without checking the lock 10 times. But trauma doesn't leave with the person who caused it. It stays. It lingers like the scent of smoke in a burned-down house. I moved to the new school with so much hope. A boarding school far from home with big windows and bright hallways and kids who smiled too easily. I told myself, this is it. This is your fresh start. But the past had followed me. The first week, I barely spoke. I didn't know how to talk to other girls. They laughed about crushes, makeup, parties. I didn't understand that kind of childhood. My innocence wasn't stolen in a single moment. It was peeled away night by night in a room that should have been safe. There was a girl in my dorm, Emma. Loud, messy, full of life. She tried to befriend me. Asked me where I was from, what I liked. I smiled politely. Said I liked books. Said I didn't really miss home. That part wasn't a lie. But when she asked about my brother, my face must have changed. I saw it in her eyes. The way her excitement faded, the way she gently said, "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to." I didn't. I never did. Because I didn't have words for what had happened to me. How do you explain to someone that your brother, the one who once read you bedtime stories, used those same hands to ruin you? There is no comfortable way to say it. So I didn't say anything at all. At night, I still slept with the blanket tucked tightly around my body, even in the heat, even when I woke up drenched in sweat, gasping. Some nights, I'd dream he was back, that he was at the foot of my bed again. I'd wake up screaming silently, teeth clenched, fists balled under the sheets. I got used to pretending to be normal, pretending I was just shy. Pretending I wasn't breaking every time someone touched my arm without warning. The teachers thought I was gifted. Bright girl, they said, very focused. Quiet, but clever. I wasn't focused. I was hiding. The only place I truly felt safe was in the library, between books, fictional worlds, characters who fought back, survivors who had names, voices, justice. Sometimes I'd imagine I was one of them, that I was strong, brave, loud. But in reality, I was still the little girl lying frozen in her bed, afraid of footsteps. One afternoon, I stayed late in the library. Everyone else had gone to dinner. I sat by the window, a book open. She used to sit right there, same expression, like she was holding the whole world in her chest and didn't know how to breathe. Still, I said nothing. Miss Carter didn't push. She just said, "Whatever it is, you survived it. You're here. That counts." And for some reason, those words stuck with me. You're here. That counts. But even that small hope didn't erase the ache. One night, Emma and some of the girls decided to watch a movie together in the common room. I didn't want to go, but they begged me. I thought, maybe it'll help. Maybe I can be normal for one night. It was a romance, some light-hearted teenage story. But then, without warning, a scene came on. A boy kissing a girl who didn't seem ready. Her body tensed. He didn't stop. Something inside me snapped. I stood up and ran, straight to the bathroom, locked the stall, threw up. After that, I stopped pretending. I wasn't okay. I started avoiding everyone, ate meals alone, sat at the back of the class. When teachers asked questions, I gave short, robotic answers. I started scratching my wrist, not hard enough to bleed, just enough to feel something, anything, because numbness is its own kind of pain. But the worst part wasn't the sadness. It was the self-hate. I blamed myself for everything, for not fighting harder, for not telling someone, for letting it go on for so long, even though I was a child, even though it was never my fault. That's the thing about abuse. It rewrites your brain, makes you believe you deserved it, that you're dirty, unlovable, broken. And I believed all of that. Then came the letter. It arrived during lunch, a plain envelope, no return address, just my name on the front. Inside, a short note in shaky handwriting. Hope you're doing well. I miss you. Love, Eidos. I felt like I'd been stabbed in the chest. How dare he? How dare he send me love? I ripped the letter into pieces and flushed it down the toilet. Then I cried so hard, I thought I might pass out. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window until the sun came up, hugging my knees to my chest. I realized then that I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't carry his crime like it was my shame. The next morning, I walked into Miss Carter's office. She looked up, surprised. Everything okay? I shook my head. No. She stood, gently closed the door, and sat beside me. And for the first time in years, I opened my mouth, and I spoke. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It's not a moment, it's a slow, excruciating crawl through darkness with only tiny sparks of light to guide you. When I told Miss Carter what happened to me, I expected her to look at me differently, to pity me, to be horrified, but she didn't. She just listened. Her eyes didn't flinch, her hands didn't tremble, she just held the space. And when I finished, when I could barely breathe from all the crying, she said only one thing. I believe you. No one had ever said those words to me before. Not once. And in that moment, something cracked inside of me, not like before, not like breaking, but like a window finally opening in a sealed room. Fresh air, light, the beginning of something. She helped me find a therapist in the nearby town. Twice a week, I'd take a bus from the school and sit in a quiet room with a woman named Amina. She was patient, soft-spoken. She didn't ask a million questions. She waited. She let me breathe. At first, I said very little, just sat there. But slowly, I began to speak. I told her everything. About my parents' coldness, about how my brother groomed me, about how I froze, about how dirty I felt even now, years later. Amina didn't try to fix me. She just validated me. You were a child, she said. You did nothing wrong. I'd heard that sentence in books, on TV, but hearing it directly, from someone real, was different. It chipped away at the shame I had buried so deep. Still, the pain didn't vanish. It showed up in waves. One evening, I walked past a boy in the hallway. He was tall, smelled like cologne, and his laugh reminded me of Eidos. I froze. My stomach twisted. I ran into the bathroom and sat on the floor, shaking. I knew it wasn't him. I knew. But my body didn't care. That's the thing about trauma. Your body remembers even when your mind tries to move on. Sometimes I'd wake up screaming. Sometimes I'd dissociate completely during class. I stopped going to group events. Emma tried again and again to get me to join, but I couldn't. I felt other, like I didn't belong. But therapy helped, slowly, very slowly. Then came a writing assignment from my English teacher. Write about a memory that changed you. My stomach dropped the moment I read it. Everyone else wrote about pets or trips or their first crush. Me? I stared at a blank page for hours, and then something inside said, "Write it. Even if no one sees it, write it for you." So I did. I wrote everything, in first person, as if I were speaking to the little girl I used to be. I'm sorry no one protected you. I'm sorry they didn't see. You didn't deserve what happened. It wasn't your fault. You are not ruined. You are not broken. You are here, and that counts. I didn't turn it in, but I kept the pages. They were mine, my truth. At the end of the semester, I went home for the holidays. I hadn't been back in over a year. The house looked the same, maybe a little more cracked, a little more gray. My mother hugged me loosely. My father barely looked up from the TV. Nothing had changed, except me. I went into my old room. The bed, the window, the walls, they all whispered memories. I sat there for a long time. Then I pulled out the ripped pieces of Idos's letter that I had taped back together. Hope you're doing well. I miss you. Love, Idos. I stared at it, and then, calmly, I wrote on the back, "You don't get to miss me. You don't get to love me. Not after what you did." I didn't send it, but I didn't destroy it either. I folded it up and placed it in a box labeled My Voice. I knew I wasn't healed, not yet. But for the first time, I wasn't trying to forget. I was trying to remember, with compassion, to look at the girl I used to be and say, "You survived." And maybe, someday, I'd be able to say, "You're free." People think healing is a straight line. It's not. It's a maze, dark and winding. Some days I felt like I was making progress. Other days I'd fall back into silence and wonder if I'd ever escape the echo of what he did to me. I moved to a new city after graduation, got into a small university, studied psychology, maybe because I wanted to understand myself, or maybe because I wanted to fix what felt broken inside me. I got a tiny apartment, part-time job, tried to build a routine. From the outside, I looked okay. But inside, I was still waiting for the sound of a door creaking open in the dark. I kept going to therapy. Amina stayed with me for years, even through video calls when I moved. She never rushed me, never told me to move on, just held space and gently pushed when I needed it. One day, she asked, "What would you say to your younger self?" I couldn't answer. Not then. My throat closed, my hands shook. But the question stayed with me. I tried dating. At first, it was terrifying. The thought of letting someone touch me, even just holding hands, made my skin crawl. But there was one boy, Malik, from one of my classes. He was kind, patient. He never pushed. He asked for permission for everything, even just a hug. I told him I had trust issues. I didn't say why, not at first. And to his credit, he never pried. The first time we kissed, I flinched. The second time I cried. The third time, I told him the truth. We were sitting on the floor in my apartment, eating noodles out of cheap plastic bowls. I just said it. When I was a kid, my brother abused me. He froze, not in fear, but in sadness. He reached out, slow, careful, and held my hand. He didn't try to fix it. He didn't say, "I'm so sorry," or "That's terrible." He just said, "Thank you for trusting me." And that was everything. But not everyone reacts like that. One day, I shared a bit of my story during a university support group. A girl there said, "You should really let it go. It's in the past." I smiled politely, but inside I burned. You don't get to tell me how long I grieve. You don't get to decide when I'm over it. That night, I wrote a letter, not to her, not to my brother, but to me, to the little girl I used to be. Dear me, you didn't deserve it. You are not disgusting. You are not ruined. You are strong, you are here, and you are allowed to speak. For the first time, I thought about writing my story, not just for therapy, but to share, to help other girls like me who are still living in silence. I started small, just a blog post. I didn't use my real name. I didn't include too many details, but I wrote with truth, raw. One day, I received a message request. It was from him, Ados. Just seeing his name made my hands go numb. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. I stared at the screen for a full minute before I opened it. I'm sorry for everything. I've changed. I hope you can forgive me one day. I wanted to scream. Forgiveness? As if it were that simple. As if an apology could erase the years I spent in silence. The nights I couldn't breathe. The parts of me I lost. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I finally understood something. His apology was not my responsibility. His guilt was not my burden. I owed him nothing. That night I wrote again. To the woman I've become, I'm proud of you for surviving, for staying, for screaming in silence when no one could hear, and now for breaking that silence. You don't need anyone's permission to heal, or to speak, or to live fully. I started speaking publicly, at schools, at shelters, at women's events. I told my story, not as a victim, but as a survivor. Some people cried, some people thanked me, some just sat in quiet shock. But every time I shared, I felt lighter, as if the weight was no longer mine alone to carry. I'm still healing. I'm still healing. Some nights are hard. Some memories still sting. But I don't run from them anymore. I look at that little girl, the one hiding under her blanket, praying for morning, and I whisper to her, "You're safe now. I've got you." This is my story. It's not pretty, it's not easy, but it's mine, and no one can silence it ever again.